Well, so they won't recognize me. God, I can't even see. Well, good evening. Before we start the regular part of tonight's program, before that same guy comes out and talks, I thought we'd do something again that we've done before. All of you people out there in TV land watching this, anybody who feels that you have been treated unjustly by life, anybody that really feels put upon and you feel as though what is needed is some kind of supernatural help or experience, what I'd like to do is if you will just come up and place your hands either on your TV or your VCR and, well, no, wait, first, would you run, we can wait, but run, take a shower, and don't dry off, and then come in. I want you to come up and put your hands on your, no, wait, before you do it, first, would you go and sit down and write out a nice check of at least $1,000 and send to our efforts, and then would go into the shower and put your hands on that. And also, since the last time we did this, I found out there was some misunderstanding from some of the audience that's watching this. I want to say this in no wise is some sort of spiritual exercise. It's kind of a quiz to see how stupid you are. Thank you. There is what we could call a slogan that we was already talking about that would be quite appropriate for a vivacious, a vigorous, a healthy and a growing reality, and that would be, if it ain't one thing, it's another. While the motto of an area, a place that would be more stagnant, could indeed be stagnant, might be that if it's one thing, it's the same thing over and over and over, which, if it sounds familiar, was basically a Kyroot from tonight. But now notice, as we go here for a second, it is not some sort of course none of it ever is, but it's not an attack, because indeed you could say that this would please, that is the latter, where if it's one thing, whatever it is, if it's one thing, then it's that same thing over and over and over. This would please the ordinary intellect, may I say, immensely. Hold up. How about another quick gander, if not a small mallard, of another one that came through tonight, another Kyroot that says, everyone loves a fanatic, even those who don't like him. And for those of you in TV land waiting for extraordinary experiences, this is not a history lesson, so you should feel some better. And this is not a political commentary, so you should feel a lot better. And it is also not a political commentary that will make any use of quotes from Matthew Arnold or John Milton, so now consider yourself healed. Oh. Everyone loves a fanatic, even those who don't like him. And if you will listen real quick, as I'm sure you will do, we're not only talking about people, which is always true, or I wouldn't say the sentence. The sentence would have never come to anyone's mind, much less our attention. But is also our interest, your interest should be, is the internal neural basis, the initial energy that, to put it in nice 3D terms, seems to project itself out into that great arena of external history and affairs of man. But everyone does love a fanatic. At least any of you think, well, no, I don't. Remember the whole thing. Everyone loves a fanatic, even those who don't like him. The fanatic is a tangible, let's start off with what appears to be the simple version, that we're actually talking about a fanatic, like a person, instead of what we're really talking about. But what a fanatic represents, not just psychologically, not just symbolically, but this is operationally the purpose a fanatic as a person is serving in the external world. A fanatic is a tangible external representation of certainty. And any of you who thinks that the ordinary intellect does not love certainty, then your ordinary intellect is subordinary. I'm sorry you were broken before you got here, and you need to have yourself seriously realigned to even try and pursue any of this. The ordinary intellect, all right, quick if you want to be able to do this yourself, at the primary level, not just ordinary intellect, but the primary existence of man. There's no word much stronger than loves. Loves certainty. And all of you can place that, piece it together for yourself. You know that the nonverbal primary level, all of the basic so-called instincts that would drive and support ordinary existence, if you're hungry, not if you are interested in a dining experience, if you're hungry, what do you want besides food? It is a corollary, it's an unstated, as everything in the primary world, but a corollary, a collateral part, a side dish of the food, is the certainty that what you're eating is food. The certainty that I have not lost my blooming mind, and I am not about to eat my house. I am not about to eat my Levi's 501. I'm about to eat food. The certainty that this is food. The certainty that this food will do what I expect it to do. Or if a person had the extreme flying horns, and you had a person of an agreeable sex in an agreeable position, you would like the certainty that if I do this, I will be dehorned temporarily. The primary level, you could say, operates on certainty. If there's no certainty, there's no primary level. But now, as always, growing from that, all the secondary affairs of man here, from civilization, apparently out there in institutions, to the individual personalities, thoughts, human emotions of men, everyone loves, and I'm being silly, of course, with it, loves certainty. You got no choice. If you had a choice, if there's an alternative to loving certainty, you belong in a home. You are an anomaly. You are partially broken as far as the normal flow of so-called progress in life is concerned. The fanatic represents absolutely a tangible, almost put your hands, of course you got close enough, I guess you can. Most fanatics seem to have an aversion to being handled a lot. Well, everything, every occupation has its little peccadillos, I guess. I don't know. But it is a tangible, living manifestation of certainty, which, from certain views, is a rare rava aris. It is a strange and not at all common bird to find in the world of secondary man, to say the least. Those of you that are already going ahead or going behind, there is no such thing as that kind of certainty in the normal, healthy, vigorous secondary world. But contrary to the growing, healthy world where, as we were talking about earlier, the last few nights, that in the intellectual world, the factual world, the factual version of a polarized world, that is, polarized energy running a three-dimensional world, if it ain't one thing, it's another. That is, at any particular time, the ordinary intellect believes that this idea, this opinion, this approach is correct, and this one's incorrect. Whereas I'm trying to get you to see that without any possible exception, no other way out, you could synonym your way out and change the word from a true idea and a false idea to a peanut butter idea and a jelly idea. But still what you're dealing with is one of them are going to dominate, or is going to dominate. You drop the sandwich and it's going to fall. How? We'll assume that peanut butter, that you're eating a reasonable form of jelly, not lead jelly. And so, if you drop the sandwich, it's going to fall with a heavy side down. One idea is going to dominate over another one. And so, here we go. If it ain't one thing, it's another. But in the world of the fanatic, in a world that would be, as Kyroot already gave away, a non-growing, a stagnant world, what you would have in a fanatic's world is, once it is one thing, and put one thing in very long quotation marks, quite serious quotation marks, because the one thing, and I say all that simply because one thing can represent whatever you think it represents. Everything from institutions to people, verbs, nouns, adjectives, adverbs, and perhaps here and there a preposition. If it's one thing in a stagnant world, in a fanatical world, if it is this one thing, whatever it is, this one opinion, and in the world, it can just be your world now, of course, or it could be shared by more than one person. But even in your world, if it's this one thing that I am sure this is true, then if it is one thing and it begins to approach this reasonable, comfortable area of certainty that is a form of fanaticism, what happens is, if it is one thing, then it's this one thing over and over and over and over. You got no choice. Now this, of course, is not the black and white, this or that way in which life normally works. But this does not keep the human intellect from being driven to believe that that should be its natural aspiration, that that should be the goal. The danger, as Kyroot had somebody point out, of progress, the ordinary use of the word progress, because it infers a finite goal. And if there's a finite goal, there's a cemetery. If there's a finite goal, there's an end. So there is no such thing as true fanaticism. If it is self-destructive, which even out here in the apparently ordinary world of politics and etc., you will note that many things come and go, but fanaticism of all sorts, even out there, political, economic, psychological, some social theory, the more fanatical it is, that is, the more certain it is, if you know how to see it, the more short-lived it is. That may live too long to suit some people that are wired up to be a part of it, but it is still very short-lived because it is suicidal. The more it is fanatical, the more that it is a representation of certainty, which there is really no such thing unless you want to call death. Death? No. Not now. Wait till we get through. So if in a world that would be less uncertain, less stable, it would also be less vibrant, and it would not be a place where their motto would be, if it ain't one thing, it's another. And I'm hoping by these hand gestures that you have on your own pieced together, that to say, if it ain't one thing, it's another, I'm partly inferring from a ordinary view that some people, if we had ordinary people in here, Jesus, there is an ordinary person. Get that. If we had an ordinary intelligence, they might hear, wait a minute, I assume that you're speaking metaphorically. And so when you say if it ain't one thing, it's another, you're right. And they could take that, not at the behavioral, crude level, but they could even, let's say, that even an ordinary person could here and there have, believe it or not, some kind of flashing something that resembles thought, and they go, well, you're saying that if it's not something in life that seems to be disagreeable, even on an intellectual, cultural, artistic level, if it's not that, it's something else. And so they could take, and if I say, well, all right, go with that, and they, to themselves, they could go, well, then that's sort of a, if he insists it's not a sarcastic comment, then it's still kind of, could we say sardonic? Well, you could, but if you ever go look up the word, you'll be sorry. Okay, we're saying it with a certain amount of ambivalence. Well, you could say that, but don't look it up either. In other words, they could take, well, if it ain't one thing, it's another, and they could have a certain kind of, how about bemused resignation? They go, yeah, it's always something. In other words, they could think, I'm still talking for ordinary intelligence, you remember? That they could say, yeah, I wish, maybe that's part of the job of progress. Or maybe they were foolish enough to tune this show and think that this was going to help along those lines. That, well, that's true. If it ain't one thing, it's another. I mean, it's always a theory about this, and at first they tell us, well, people drink and become addicted to drugs because of a flaw in their character. I grew up hearing that, and then suddenly we seem to be overswept again by some kind of lashback from conservative religion and say, oh, no. It's evil forces, Satan and anti-spirits and stuff come in to take us, and now it's some kind of social. If ain't one thing, about the time I think, well, all right, I understand what's going on over here in this social area. I understand what's going on here, and now it's something else. And so, you follow me? They could, at least tacitly, be dealing under the kind of assumption that, all right, if it ain't one thing, it's another. Bemused resignation, perhaps tinged with hope. That perhaps the progress of man, perhaps if I eat my Wheaties and keep watching this show, or maybe just humanity as a whole, will reach greater and greater areas of certainty, wherein it's not a matter of, quote, if it's just one thing, it's another. But, and notice that I have to go through all of that to get back to here. Just to get you back to the place that it's not that that's wrong, but notice it is natural to hear, well, if it ain't one thing, it's another, in an intellectual way. Forget in some kind of behavioral way in the acts of nature and fate. And to take it as being a verbal representation of the uncertainties of life, you must see that any ordinary neural level, a reasonable man, as the law used to like to refer to him as, a reasonable man would think, well, part of the progress of humanity is to reach areas of less and less uncertainty, wherein it is less and less a matter of, if it ain't one thing, it's another. That's only natural. That is part of the way the life is wired up. But can you see it's not true? Because if you take that closer and closer to the area of uncertainty, what you have got becomes, relatively speaking, it becomes almost the domain of the fanatic. And surely all you people are too insightful to get strangled on history or actual politics out here. Because I repeat, everyone loves a fanatic. Well, if any of you doubt this, notice historically, thousands of years ago or 50 years ago, what becomes, I guess we'll put in quotation marks, but becomes a kind of heroic status of villains. People who hate somebody in history, you find out they collect books about him or some area of history. And it's not because of some psychological flaw. And I know that even this is of no great importance, but I know that there's enough of this has been noticed in life that there's even been psychological studies and theories made about victims wanting to relive, wanting to imagine how they've been mistreated. No. That's child's play. Kyroot told you, everyone loves a fanatic, even those who don't like him. Because everyone loves the fanatical idea. Even if you don't like the idea. Because, boy, is it... All right, I'll understate it. Agreeable. Comfortable. But if you got to the area that would become certain, and forget history and politics, but the more you got into an area that there would be increasing certainty, you would be more and more into an area that would be a kind of neural fascism, because it will become the same thing, whatever the thing is, whatever the idea, and it could be one idea, or it could seem to blossom into some kind of systemic collection of ideas. But the more that this thing seems to have stopped being encased in, if it ain't one thing, it's another, and more into an area on which you may at least partially rely, and it does not seem to flip-flop and change, that you go to bed and get the next day and your mind seems to be different, you have a different attitude, the more, at the ordinary level, that you seem to be gaining grounds of certainty, the more you are becoming a kind of mental fascist state, because it becomes the same thing over and over, which anyone who's interested in art and culture, I don't know how you would be simultaneously interested in fascism, but that is the nature of fascism, drabness. Except there are people that is, their nervous systems, who find an attractiveness to drabness. No? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well, when it gets too strange, I have to do the very things I keep saying don't. All right, I'll point back out here. In some of your lifetimes, in this century, you've had good examples of fascist states. Look at their arts. As always, arts or any of the examples are not the ultimate expression of what's going on. But the arts, their architecture, their dress, but all of the arts, including all social behavior, all social interaction, becomes, if there's one operative word, just from a reasonable view, it would be drab. Everyone tends to dress in gray. Condo beige. The buildings get to be, uneventful. It's like there's nothing exciting going on except what? The great leader, the fanatic, the apparent only spark that seems to be running through the society, through the neural group. But if you want to take it back out here for a second, what's the only excitement? It's like the rest of the time the people almost, well, at least figurative, it's like during the days they walk in lockstep. They tend to dress. Same kind of little jackets. Everybody dresses alike. The buildings become plain. The art, as they normally put it, has to represent, if it represents anything, simply has to represent. In our century, it's been called like the dreams of the masses. Some kind of definite goal, that is, that will all become what? The same! Except, of course, for the fanatic. Except for the leader. Now, at least any of you think this sounds like, for instance, Italy during the 20s, 30s, and 40s. You don't have to look in the history book. Rush to the restroom and look at your brain. My God, I am a young lady. No, I was a different Kyroot. I am Italy. I am a fascist state. And forget politics. I am a drab state. From other views, outside of any system, political or individual, outside of a system, if we took people, let us say, artists living on the left bank during the 30s, wow people, Picassos and all those, and they saw films, to make it simple, of Italy during the fascist regime, and they would think, God almighty, how could you live like that? And that's just one example. If it's too early for you, a lot of you grew up hearing cries from the United States about the USSR and other countries that had a different political system. How could people live under this kind of tyranny and no freedom? And look how they all are so poorly dressed. Not just poorly dressed, not just that you can look at their clothes in movie reels and see that it's a cheap tailoring job. That's not the worst part. Look at all those poor Chinese. You can't look and tell that that's real shoddy workmanship. You can't get past the point that, my God, they're all kind of chicken shit brown color and they're all just the same. Now, from some view, and we're not comparing France, the United States, and Italy. You got to forget all that. But it's from some view where things are less certain. They look upon that which seems to be extremely drab. It seems to be sameness driven into the ground. And they marvel. They express absolute disbelief. How can someone live like that? And of course, if you're ordinary, you can do that. I was going to say that if you had any chance of being unordinary, you don't have to say to some other person, now forget politics and all that crap, that you look at some other person, some other idea, and go, my God, how could anybody live under that condition? How could anybody think under those conditions? You must look out there at a history book. You must look at a movie reel. And whatever you do, do not look internally. Because you are certain this is unbelievable. I don't even have any interest in politics. But my God, how could you live in a country where they won't even let you dress the way you want to? I cannot believe it. Are you certain you can't believe it? Oh, I'm serious. I can't believe it. Are you pretty certain that that's not the way to live? Well, it's not the way to live as far as I'm concerned. Wasted dramatics, theatrics. All right, try it this way. Back and forth, so I don't have to keep doing this. We can be talking about what's going on out there, because it flies as always, because it originally took off from the airfield that I'm talking about. So of course it flies. And I don't have to make it up out there, but remember, that's not what we're talking about. But what seems to be the goals of fanatical thought, fanatical activity when it happens out there, but we're still talking about fanatical thought, the belief that we should be and that we are moving toward intellectual certainty, secondary certainty, that is what we're after, without knowing what they're describing is, hey, let's all dress up in mild jackets and all, hold up some kind of mask, all look the same, and we'll all... But we're not talking about that, we're talking about internally. The power, part of it, is that the goals of all fanatical thought seem to be unchanging. In the midst, how about this? In the midst of the gross uncertainties of life. When you have a fanatical system out there, when you have a fanatical system in here, at least you have a goal that appears to be unchanging. And those that seem to be a part of it seem to be unswerving in their devotion to it. Forget politics. Just the nature of trying to bring some stability to your country. Oh, I'm sorry. To your brain, to your mind. Not your country, it was just a slip of the lips. Also a part of that, when it seems to be an unchanging goal, also what makes it so efficient and so pleasurable to people, even those who don't like it, remember, is that once you have what appears to be this unchanging goal, whatever it is, that you've got one thing now that seems to be certain, the goal at least, then along the way, no matter when it appears, as it will, that not only opposing forces want to pop up, opposing ideas, but there are times, even from those involved, that momentarily it strikes them that some of these opposing ideas, forces, that pop up even seem to be more reasonable, more logical. Aha! But that's the power. That's part of the power of fanatical thought, is you can blindly, confidently press on. You could call it, I'm being crude, but this is a fair reflection, is, stuff the facts, I know where I'm going. That kind of thing. It's not just funny. It's not just a sarcastic remark. Were it not for that, all you got to do is be able to drag yourself just a little bit past 2 and 2 equals 4, and if we had time, hell, I'd go back and drag that into it, which we may eventually anyway. But anything outside of what appeared to be hard science, just to give you an easy way out, anything outside of that has got to be blindly followed. Because at any given time, and it's not, you don't have any choice at the ordinary level. It's not that, well, wait a minute, perhaps I have been politically misled. Perhaps I should rethink my position. You can rethink your position. You can eat a Hershey bar. You can change your underwear. But remember this, if it ain't one thing, it's another. Yes, but at one time I thought I was in favor of a more liberal political view, but let me guess. You came to your senses. Well, yes I did. And I bet now you see that a more conservative attitude is, how did you know? Lucky guess. Well, I used to favor, I'm ashamed to admit, well, no, I don't. Hell, I'll tell you, I used to favor the peanut butter approach. But now, may I guess again? Oh, you're good at this. Jelly. You did it again. If it ain't 2, it's 2. Because it's going to come out 4. It's going to be a sandwich. It could be peanut butter and jelly, but it could be jelly and peanut butter. You know, the stickier this gets, the more viscid it gets. Or, for those of you that, the more viscid it gets, the stickier it gets. There is even a kind of psychological, I guess it's worth noting because everyone participates in it, and you might be able to use it as a better peephole than some of what I'm doing. Peephole is a dominant fanatic. Consider that all one term. Or another version is a dominating fanatical idea. It's the same thing. But if I described it to ordinary intelligence, which I've just been doing, and I'll play its part, what it can appear to do at a psychological level, which I only bring this up because maybe it'll help some of you get a glimpse of something else, it's as though it offers a kind of escape from that otherwise healthy, albeit relentless, press of, if it ain't one thing, it's another. Which, I should leave it there, shouldn't I? Yeah, but I don't have the sense God gave a... People keep writing why do I pick on the same religions and the same professions. I got an answer for that. I never answered. Why do you people in those religions, those professions, keep doing it? Since I brought up the kind of psychological outlining of fanatical thought, and since we're running out of tape and we can't go in much of another direction, even though that's not the purpose of all this, do note that there is a kind of relief that people seem to need. It's illusionary because there is no relief in the closet. You're not going anywhere. I mean, if you're dealing with 3 dimensions and you think, if I could just have some relief from depth. Depth is driving me nuts. Give yourself a break, folks. At least we got something impossible to think about. Like if I could just have some relief from these despicable voices coming to me from Saturn. Now we're getting somewhere. Maybe you can get some help. But to start thinking, I am being driven absolutely bonkers by breath. Notice there is no church of the anti-breath or doubt. There is no relief in the world from real ills, from real pressures, only imaginary ones. That's why the world is what it is. But it does seem, notice, that it does seem to be a kind of relief for the mind to imagine that there are such things. I know that you people, you're all civilized and decent, and you would have never to yourself thought about, you wouldn't have used about your own thinking, fanaticism. You would use it as a pejorative term, an attack on other people. But notice the desire, or looked at withal another way, notice how uncomfortable it is. It's not an attack at the ordinary level. Of course, you're still at the ordinary level, you deserve to be attacked. Screw you, I don't know what you're doing here. But back at the ordinary level, the way life works, it is uncomfortable if you get away from it and can see it. That they are correct for people to say, life is so uncertain. And of course, they normally wrap this up in a coda of, staring off toward a graveyard thinking, oh God. But between here and when they sing, will the circle be unbroken? I was never much... We're not involved in religion. I just thought maybe if there's not life after death, has any of you ever heard Willie Nelson sing, will the circle be unbroken? Maybe if you do die and you can arrange to have him sing, Nobody's ever seen a dead body get up, but anybody that's got a musical ear, never mind. Never mind. It was just a thought. Just a thought. The power, the attraction of dominant fanaticism, which is what we're talking about. It's just you're always having something dominate. With decent, right-thinking, democratic Americans, let's say, then the dominating idea is American type free market democracy, let's just say. That is the dominating idea to us. Okay. But notice, when it is really in the saddle, it is a form of fanaticism. One last time, we only got a few seconds. Forget politics and forget the normal use of the word fanaticism, because you would not have used it. But there is an attraction, because it appears to be almost an escape from the uncertainties of life. And it certainly does, even though that's not the point, it certainly does. Out there in life with ordinary people, gripping, falling, trying to hold on to the ankles of some fanatic, some guy somewhere that says, we've all got to pack up and fly away to Saturn, and I'm the only person that can do it, because life is falling apart. You see that, don't you? And hell, people just going by and they didn't even hear the rest of it. They hear, life is going down the tubes, isn't it? And you're just walking by on your way to go get a sandwich. And you think, well, yeah. Of course, then you hear, we all got to go to Saturn, and you may think, well, I'd rather have a peanut butter sandwich than to deal with nuts like that. But just as soon as you hear, oh God, boy, are things in terrible shape, almost everybody goes. And if it's just for a second, even the little bit I just did that made you laugh, that is kind of a tacit teaser that whoever said that, if they said it in a booming voice or other people seem to be listening, you just automatically assume, well, this person probably, at least is going to appear to know something about it. And what you're hearing, without knowing it, is, hey, he may be a real fanatic. He may be my kind of fanatic. The ideas may be my form of fanaticism. It may be, finally, the land of Oz. Paradise. Heaven. The land of certainty. The fascist state. If I could just find it. And since you can't find it, unless you want to include Cresslawn, that's your prerogative. But this side of there is none at the ordinary level. There is no certainty. But notice the dream of it. The dream of, if I could only get to a land where everything is uniform. And yet if you put it that way, people go, oh no. I don't want to live in that kind of place. Sure you do. That's what the primary world is driven toward. It's what it's based on. And it's what this is. But simultaneously believing otherwise. That is the efficiency. Kyroot, again tonight, pointed out one, or he had somebody, that the movement, the evolution of human thought goes through many stages. But for the sake of efficiency, men lumped them all under two different names, just two names. Very efficient. I hate to fool with it. Thank God time's running up. Yeah. Many stages. I'm telling you, or Kyroot was, really an operational fact. Many stages. No matter what the thought is, no matter what the idea is, it goes through a metamorphosis of many, many stages. But notice the efficiency. That it works. It is functional. That the human mind takes all of them. Now, I'm not going to give you a number, just many. Many, several. Many. And it can lump them all properly, functionally, just under two names. Well, all right. You could say that certainty certainly is a surcease for ordinary minds. Fade out.